happens when a spook and a really consequential politician forge a friendship over many decades? What happens when that man is Farooq Abdullah and the spook in question is former RNW chief A.S Dulat? What emerges is a riveting chronicle, a new book called The Chief Minister and the Spy, an intimate portrait not just of a friendship between the two men, but of one of India's most consequential politicians, whether you agree, disagree, like him or not. Farooq Abdullah has shaped both national politics and the politics of Jammu and Kashmir for many, many years. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be talking to A.S Dulat, former RNW chief, on his new biography of Farooq Abdullah. Mr. Dulat is extremely well placed to paint this portrait, an intimate portrait, a racy, riveting read about one of India's tallest politicians. In fact, the book captures Farooq Abdullah in his persona of someone who has, according to the author, always been a nationalist, but alongside has also had an often flamboyant, tempestuous, mercurial side. There's a lot to talk about in Jammu and Kashmir. What is the relationship like between father and son? Do Farooq Abdullah and Omar Abdullah see eye to eye on politics? Do they think the same way ideologically? What have been Farooq Abdullah's most bitter disappointments? Can the National Conference ever ally again with the BJP? And who sent the former RNW chief A.S Dulat to meet with Farooq Abdullah in the aftermath of the abrogation of Article 370? These questions and many juicy and interesting answers to these questions are found in Dulat's new book, The Chief Minister and the Spy, on what he calls his unlikely friendship with Farooq Abdullah. Now, I want to welcome A.S Dulat, our newsmaker, to the program, the author of this new book, a prolific author. I've had the pleasure, Mr. Dulat, of talking to you after each one of your books. And even as somebody who, like you, has spent much of my adult professional life reporting on and from Jammu and Kashmir, we have that magnificent obsession in common. There were things that I found in this book that I did not know. And I'm a dogged Kashmir watcher. What made you write this book? Let's start there. Why did you think that you needed to write this book? Not just on your friendship with Farooq Abdullah, but the story of Farooq Abdullah. And what comes across in this book is that you seem to believe that he's a man who's never fully got his due.
Yeah. You know, we had talked about it once, Barkha, you remember. And that's before I started seriously thinking about this book. You know, this is my fifth book. As you said, I never thought I'd write so many books. But each book that I've written, the core of them all has been Kashmir. And I felt that writing so much about Kashmir, as you would have observed, this book is dedicated. Everybody thinks it's dedicated to the Abdullah family, but it's not. It's dedicated to Kashmir and Kashmiris, to whom I feel I owe a huge debt, you know. If whatever I have, whatever I've become, it's because of Kashmir and my long association with Kashmir. Now, Farooq has been very special in that. As I've mentioned once or twice in the book, he is Kashmir. So I felt I owed this book to him. In fact, in a sense, you know, this book has been in my mind ever since I first met him in the winter of 1987. And it had to happen sooner or later, like a book on Kashmir. If a book on Kashmir had to happen, a book on Farooq Abdullah had to happen. It was just that he was delaying it. You know, he would say, "Haan, karenge, dekh lenge," this, that, and the other. Till I thought, now if I have to do it, I have to do it now. So when I was in Srinagar last summer, I said to him, I said, "Sir, now I've started the book." So true to his, you know, what I expected, he said, "Fair karo now." And that's how it started. And it's been done in a rush, this book, you know. One could have written much, much more about Farooq, but I wanted to finish it in 6 months. So that's how it is, yeah.
So, you acknowledge in the book that a lot of people call you Farooq's man and that you don't mind. But that might influence how people see this book. They may say that you see Farooq Abdullah only through rose tinted glasses. What would you say to that?
No, no, I agree. I mean, I have been partial to Farooq. I've been partial to the family, and I've been partial to Kashmir also. I would admit it. And if I've been partial to Kashmir, then most of all to Farooq, because over a period of time, for a long time, people have been saying he's a friend of yours. And I said, how can he be a friend of mine? He's a big politician. I'm a piddly nothing, And but it has sort of developed in that kind of way because as time goes on, with age now, it's a different Farooq now. It's a mellowed Farooq, and it's a much more, religious or a Farooq who believes much more in God and the Quran and whatever it is. So it's a different kind of Farooq. 5-7 years ago, he was not willing to say, okay, write a book on me. Now he knows
Yeah.
time is running out for everyone. And so if it has to be done, it has to be done now. And I can assure you that he will enjoy this book as much as I will enjoy it.
So I have to say that I have raced through the book and it is an easy read. It is a very accessible read. And let's start with the most recent developments, which is the abrogation of Article 370. You write in the book that the house arrest of Farooq Abdullah was one of the saddest stories to have ever emerged from Jammu and Kashmir. But the interesting little nugget in the book, and you don't reveal everything, so I'm hoping you'll reveal a little more in this conversation, is that suddenly you find yourself tasked with reaching out to Farooq Abdullah, even as he is under house arrest. And you go to Srinagar and you meet with Farooq Abdullah, right? Now, the question is,
I couldn't hear you, Barkha, now.
Now, are you pretending not to hear me now?
No, I'll never pretend with you.
Okay.
I don't need to.
Let me ask the question again. I said,
please.
Yeah, I said that you write about what happened in the aftermath of the abrogation of Article 370,
Yeah.
right? And you say the house arrest of Farooq Abdullah was one of the saddest stories ever to have come out of Kashmir. But you also write in the book, without revealing who sent you, and I hope you'll tell us in this conversation, that you were tasked with the job of reaching out to Farooq Abdullah while he was still under house arrest. Obviously, somebody in the government reached out to you. Who reached out to you to reach out to Farooq Abdullah?
You see, let's not name names here because of the fact that I haven't done it since then. But yes, somebody did reach out to me. The story goes back to October of 1990 when, communication between Srinagar and Delhi started. And I spoke to Dr. Saab and just to inquire about his health. And he said, I'm all right. And I said, if I want to come and visit you, what happens? Can I come? He said, you have to ask these people, meaning Delhi. So I asked a colleague in Srinagar and I said, could I visit Dr. Saab just to say hello and inquire about his health? And he said, well, I'll have to ask Delhi. I said, then don't do it. I am in Delhi. I can ask Delhi. So the story ended there till somebody thought that I might be useful in going to Srinagar. I always wanted to go, and the government or the person concerned felt that, well, if he wants to go, possibly he's the best person. And there were two issues really which concerned the government at that time. One was that obviously they had decided or they were thinking of releasing Farooq. The two issues on their mind was that he should not come out and criticize the abrogation, and two, he should not talk about Pakistan. Now, I can't remember exactly whether I said this to Farooq or not, but I didn't have to because he was far too smart. He wouldn't do these things, And I did say to him, possibly before I left the house, that says, be careful with the press. He said, I'm
Mm.
not going to talk to the press. I tell them I'm only going to say whatever I have to say in Parliament. And he did exactly that. So Farooq understands things. He doesn't need to be told these things. What actually broke his heart was his house arrest. And that came out very clearly. And so it was sad. I mean, he said a lot of things about it, but it was sad.
But let me push you a little bit further on this. Would it be fair
Mhm.
to say that in the aftermath of this 370 abrogation and Farooq Abdullah's own house arrest, you were in that moment a kind of informal mediator between the Modi government and Farooq Abdullah? Would that be accurate?
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
So,
Yeah.
as you were mediating between the
No,
Modi
I was
government,
not mediating. No, no. I
a
was only
messenger, were you a messenger?
messenger. Yeah,
A
yeah,
messenger?
a messenger who didn't need to say anything. I mostly kept quiet and listened to Dr. Saab. And he
So,
was
why?
not in a mood to say. I'll tell you another thing. He wasn't in a mood to talk either. It's not the kind of Farooq that you and I know. He was, he was quite heartbroken. And because he wouldn't talk at the end, I said, I've got to take a story back to Delhi. Can I talk to Safia?
Hmm.
And so Safia spoke to me for the last half an hour, and I said, okay, now I have it. Because she said what Farooq was trying to say, that we are Indians, we've always been Indians. My father was an Indian, my son is an Indian, my grandchildren are Indian, but now they're asking me, what kind of India is this? And that's what Safia also said to me.
Before we come to that and the impact of the abrogation, I'm still going to push a little bit further on who tasked you to be the messenger between the government and Farooq Abdullah. My educated guess would be the National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval. Would you confirm or deny that?
No, I wouldn't confirm that or anything. I think let's leave it at whatever it was. I haven't named names and I don't want to name names now. But yeah, obviously somebody in government did help me to go there.
And did you carry back a message as well, or it was a one-way message from the government to Farooq?
No, no, I did. I did. That's why I said I needed to talk to Safia because Farooq was saying nothing. So I said, please let me speak to Safia. And the message was very clear that there's a lot of hurt there. There's a lot of this thing that what are we going to tell our grandchildren now? And in fact, Safia said much more, which I don't want to say here. But it was a sad, sad story at that time. And I came back and I conveyed it. And I said, if Delhi is looking for cooperation from Dr. Farooq, as always, it would be forthcoming. But Farooq can't be pushed. It'll have to be on mutual terms, not just on Delhi's terms. And that is what Delhi has never understood. I'm not talking just of Prime Minister Modi's government. It's happened all the time. It happened. I don't know if it happened. I guess it never happened in Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, but it happened in. I was a party to it. I saw to it. I saw it closely. And during Prime Minister Vajpayee's time, it happened during Narasimha Rao's time. It happened certainly during Indira Gandhi's time. So it always happened. The only person with whom he had a comfortable relationship was Rajiv Gandhi. And unfortunately, Rajiv also took too long to understand Farooq. And it was only after Farooq resigned in 1990 that Rajiv regretted what had happened. And he desperately at one stage sent Rajesh Pilot to bring Farooq to Delhi to try and persuade him not to resign. But Farooq, once he makes up his mind to do something, he won't change his mind. So he said, thanks very much for calling me. Thanks for all the good things you're saying to me. But I'm going to go back and resign. And he resigned. And I
Yeah.
congratulated him.
Now, the big question after the abrogation of 370, the changes that it has brought, is whether the national conference could ever be in political business with the BJP again. Let us remember that Farooq Abdullah and his son were allies of the Vajpayee government. I know
Yeah.
this is a very different context, but politics is the art of the possible. And as you said, Dr. Saib, Dr. Abdullah has always known that anybody in Jammu and Kashmir needs a cooperative relationship with whoever is in government in Delhi. That's just the nature of the beast. Before we come to how father and son may see things differently, it's something you address in your book. Do you believe that Farooq Abdullah, who has met with Prime Minister Modi, who has friends across the political spectrum, who has been a partner of the NDA before, could be a formal partner of the BJP again?
Let me try and explain this, Barkha. There was a time, after his release, Delhi was very keen to get him to Delhi. And he took his time being Farooq. He didn't come. They wanted him there in March, and he ultimately came only in July. That's the way Farooq functions. And but I'll tell you one thing, because whenever he came to Delhi, almost always we met, and we chatted, and we chatted about various things. And I can tell you that there was a period, let's say 20 to 23. I wouldn't know the exact dates now, when he was quite willing to do business with the BJP, if it was on reasonable terms. But it didn't happen as far
after the
after the
abrogation. Now, this
after
is a
the
very big
abrogation.
statement. You're saying Farooq was willing to do business with the BJP after the abrogation.
Yeah. There's a certain period I'm talking about, 20 to 23. Then you see what happens. And I'm saying 23 because I think the basic point is that, when Rahul started his Padyatra, then Farooq's mind began to change. He saw a youngster who he felt, could change India. And he had a lot of, this exactly what you're showing now, that hug, which Rahul Gandhi gave him after they walked together. Farooq specially called me up and said, it touched me so much. And that's after that is what the India Alliance came up. And then that possibility of doing any business with the BJP faded away. But I tell you something else very interesting. Before the results came out,
but why didn't that work out? That time period when he was willing to do business with the BJP, why do
I
you think it
don't
didn't work
know.
out?
I don't know, because I don't know what government is up to, and Farooq doesn't tell me everything. You know that. He doesn't tell anybody everything. I have to just, it's only guesswork. But I know, because he used to tell me, it made me laugh one day. He said, always keep your doors open to everybody. I said, sir, my doors are always open, but I don't know who's coming through those doors these days. So that's the sort of thing. Now, I'll tell you another story that, when the assembly elections happened, there were various views on what will the result be like, and this, that, and the other. There were people in Kashmir who said the NC and the Congress would get 50 seats. I said, no, that can't happen. That's too many. They said, you see what will happen. It will be 50 seats. But closer to the time of the results, there was a feeling in Delhi, and I think in the intelligence circles as well, that it may be 30-30, 30 to the NC and 30 to the BJP. Then what would happen?
Yeah.
Then there would be the same inevitability that Mufti Muhammad Saeed had to suffer. There would have been no other way out then. But fortunately for the National Conference, it got 42 seats. Because I know there were people in Delhi running helter-skelter at that time, looking for Dr. Saab. And I even called him at one stage. I said, there are people wanting to talk to you. He said, I'm not coming to Delhi. I can't come to Delhi. So he was biding his time and hoping that the national conference would do well. And it did well, and he was delighted. I think it was a victory for, of course, for Omar Abdullah, but it was a big victory for Dr. Saab. And it
Yeah.
was it was a victory for Kashmir also.
But from what you're describing, never say never, as Dr. Saab told
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
never say
never say
never.
never.
So when we ask the question, could the national conference be in business with the BJP again? I think your answer would be who knows, maybe.
Today, Dr. Saab is not prepared to do a deal with the BJP. That's the way I'll put it.
Okay.
Yeah, he would, because he's told me many times while in the course of while I was writing this book, he said, we've always been with the Congress and we will always remain with the Congress. He said, because my father told me that basically the Congress DNA is secular. So stay with the Congress, come what may. Now, there have been times, there have been compulsions, and it would, let me tell you, that having criticized Mufti Saab so much, and that criticism of Mufti hasn't stopped in the valley even today, Dr. Saab would find it very, very difficult. But then he's a practical person. He possibly would have done it.
Yeah.
Now,
And
even if Omar wants to do it, he can't do it. That's the
does Omar
reality of it.
does Omar want to ally with the BJP? I mean, he denies it on record. He strenuously denied it in the campaign.
He has
You
to
have
deny it. He cannot do it now. The numbers are such. You see, 30-30, yeah, he would possibly have to do it. 42 and 6 of the Congress, how can he do it now? He can't do it.
Let's come to one of the most candid chapters in your book, which is the relationship between Farooq Abdullah and his son Omar Abdullah. Right now,
Hmm.
when we look at this chapter, it's very clear that you are speaking as Farooq's guy, and you're not that kind to Omar Abdullah. Before I come to the specifics, would you concede that you're a bit harsh on Omar?
I don't think so. No. There have been periods. I've seen, I don't want to say boy, because he's the chief minister now, but I've seen him since the time he was head boy in Sana'a, That's when I first came across him. And because our daughter was also in Sana'a, and we had gone for their, whatever, the big day. And that's when I first met Omar. He was in school. So I've seen, the growing of Omar Abdullah. What I will say is that he's not his father,
Yeah. So
He is not.
can I stop you there, because you refer to his head boy years at Sanar. One of the
Yeah.
lines that leaps out from the chapter is you
Hmm.
say Farooq Abdullah is 100% Indian and 100% Kashmiri, and
Hmm.
Omar Abdullah is 100% Indian, 50% Kashmiri, and 50% still head boy of Sanar.
Hmm.
Explain this.
He's very correct, That's what you learn in a public school. That you have to be correct. You have to be straight. You have to be honest. You have to own up. Now, Farooq is none of that. So that's what the implication is. Also, quite often it's been said, various things have been said about Omar. Not that they haven't been said about Farooq. That, Omar is half English and Omar is, he's all the time on his mobile, or he's more dependent on security. All those things are there. But I would say, as a human being, Omar is a first-class human being. There's no doubt about it, in my mind. The thing is that as a politician, he's not half his father, and I don't think he will ever be. In my thinking, and most Kashmiris will not agree with me, but I think they need to introspect. And I think ultimately, when history is written, I think Dr. Farooq Abdullah is a bigger person than his father.
Than his son, you mean?
Than his father. the Sheikh.
You're saying Farooq Abdullah is a bigger person than Sheikh Abdullah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most people will not agree with me. But he's had to go through very difficult times. Sheikh spent a lot of time in jail, no doubt. But he always had the support first of the Mahatma and then of Panditji. And it was Pandit Nehru who ultimately got fed up with that Kashmir conspiracy case. And he said, enough is enough. I want the Sheikh out. And can you imagine, not only was the Sheikh out, he went and stayed with Pandit Nehru in the Prime Minister's house.
But you know
Could that happen today?
No, but you know what also emerges in your chapter on Farooq Abdullah and his son Omar is a kind of, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say competitiveness. You basically talk about, and there's a line in there, you say Farooq Abdullah was torn between his love for Kashmir and his love for his son, right?
That's right. That's right.
You also talk about how at an earlier point, Omar Abdullah spoke about his grandfather, but did not speak about his father, and that would prove to be counterproductive for him. That's back in the day.
I was talking about the 2002 election. Yeah.
That's right.
It was counterproductive.
Right. But over the years, and I remember this well, in 2008, there was this sense that Omar Abdullah was going to be the face of the chief minister's post. And Farooq Abdullah publicly declared his interest in that seat. Now, it didn't happen. Omar becomes chief minister.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember it was an interview with you when he said the night before the decision was taken. He said, who told you I'm going to be prime minister? I'm going to be chief minister. Now I'll tell you something else.
No, but hang on.
Okay.
I remember this moment very well. It was by the Nagin Lake. We were doing a program, and Farooq Abdullah comes there, and I say to him, Farooq Saab, now are you all set for Omar to become the chief minister? And he publicly says, no. Why? I will be chief minister. And we were all taken aback. The national conference was taken aback. And that was the first time that there was the sense that there was some tension between Omar and Farooq. It may not exist today. Over Farooq Abdullah feeling like he was, in a way, not given the opportunity to be chief minister again.
Again, no, that was the first time.
No, I'm saying pehle he had been chief minister. He wanted to be chief minister again, and that didn't happen for him. So would you concede this competitiveness between father and son? How would you characterize it?
You see, what was going on actually in 2008, when I'm saying going on, I mean in the household, I really wouldn't know. But I can tell you one thing about 2008, because, I follow Kashmir all the time, that in 2008, it was very clear that Kashmir wanted Omar Abdullah as chief minister. And there are various reasons for that. I don't want to go into that. But Farooq understood that. So he was not going to challenge that. What he said to you, he said to you, on the spur of the moment, whatever the reason.
Yeah.
So, but I'll tell you about now, even now, 2024, Farooq said to me at least 3 or 4 times that I am going to be chief minister. I want to be chief minister. I'm going to be chief minister.
This time in 2024.
Absolutely. And that is why Omar Abdullah contested the parliament election from Baramulla. Farooq was hoping Omar will go to parliament and he would become chief minister. But Omar lost that election. And then, after the assembly elections, the father didn't again want to be called a spoil sport. So he stepped back. And I can tell you, since Omar Abdullah's swearing in, since the time he's become chief minister, the father has become much more protective of his son, much more loving of his son, even glorifies him now, if you listen carefully. And so things are changing.
Hang on, so I'm confused.
No, there's no confusion.
I'm confused. Help me here.
Uh,
2008,
yeah,
I remember well because Farooq said it to me that he wants to be
yeah,
CM. He doesn't become
yeah.
CM, Omar becomes CM. You are
Hmm.
saying in 2024 assembly elections, Omar Abdullah was expected, Farooq thought, to go to parliament, and
Absolutely.
Farooq Abdullah told you that he wanted to be chief minister.
3, 4 times he told me, I'm going to be chief minister. There was
So
no
what? Why
doubt
did?
about. I
So
mean,
why didn't it
I
happen?
never.
Why didn't it? Why didn't it happen?
It's staring in the face why it didn't happen because Omar lost that parliament seat. So Omar was not going to parliament. So he had to be accommodated in Srinagar as chief minister.
So you're saying if engineer Rashid had not defeated Omar Abdullah, if Omar
Absolutely. Yeah.
Abdullah had been member of parliament from Baramulla,
Hmm.
Farooq Abdullah would have been chief minister. Because Omar lost his seat, Farooq sacrificed or his desire to make way for his
Yeah.
son.
That's right. That's right. And that is why you find today, whatever he might say or not say, he is much, much more protective of his son. He's much, much more supportive of his son. He's much, much more loving of his son. And if I might add, even glorifies him now.
But there's another sentence in your book where I think you quote either Ashok Bhan or a national conference leader, and you say
Mm-hmm.
Farooq Saab's big dream was to be buried as chief minister next to Sher Kashmir, right? And that
That's right.
dream did not come.
That's
That
what.
dream didn't come
Yeah.
through.
No, that dream didn't come true. That's what Ashok Bhan said to me, and I've quoted it because that's exactly what Dr. Shah was telling me. Not why he wanted to be buried. I don't think he's ready to be buried just now, but what he was saying was that I want to be chief minister. I will be chief minister.
So that sentence in your book, torn between his love for Kashmir and his love for his son, clearly his love for
Yeah.
his son prevailed.
Yeah, yeah. And now it's big time. There is also a sentence. I don't know if it's in Father and Son or if it's in the last chapter, The Lion in Winter,
Hmm.
that now such is the intensity of his love for his son that it amounts to glorification now. There is an intensity about it. There's no doubt about it. I've given an example in that book, for instance, I don't want to say what the reason was, but he was expected here in November last year, at the end of November.
Hmm.
And a couple of days before that, I reminded him, I said, sir, you're coming to Delhi. He said, no, I'm not. I've got more important things to do. So, when Farooq says something, you can't question him. And then he explained to me, he said, I'm going on Umrah with my son. And that is more important than coming to Delhi.
So, would it be fair to say that it was a relationship with some tension, and that tension is now a thing of the past?
There is no tension. No, I don't
No,
see any
earlier.
tension now.
No, earlier, not now. Earlier, back in the day, maybe 2002 when Omar loses, when Omar is still trying to find his feet as a politician, when Farooq still has aspiration to be chief minister. I mean, do you think these are things they debate openly, like who's going to be chief minister? Like, how does it work?
No, I don't think they debate it openly. Farooq is Farooq. Farooq is the boss. What I can say about the relationship in the family is that what Umar has thought about his father, I am not 100% sure about. But Farooq has been an extremely, extremely good father, notwithstanding anything else that anyone might say. He's always been a good father, and he's been a good husband.
Hmm. You have a very peculiar sentence in the book. I don't know how
Hmm.
many people will notice it, but I picked it up.
But
You said
am I not peculiar?
you are indeed, but even by your standards, this is a peculiar sentence.
Tell me.
Delhi and Islamabad both
Hmm.
prefer Omar to Farooq. This is a
Yeah, yeah,
sentence in your book.
yeah, yeah. Of
What
course.
Can you explain what this means and why Islamabad prefers Omar to Farooq? I mean, of course, you're not suggesting that Omar is partial to the Pakistanis. I should clarify that is
No,
not
no,
what.
no, 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 no,
That is no. I
no,
just want to clarify. I just want to clarify that that's
no,
not
no,
what the
no.
sentence means. But what does this
Absolutely
sentence
not.
mean? What does this sentence mean?
You see, if you remember 2002, the trick in Delhi was to get Farooq out of Kashmir
Hmm.
and send Umar to Kashmir as chief minister. That is what Vajpayee wanted, desperately wanted. Now, again, that whole scheme failed because Umar lost his election. If Umar had not lost his election, there may have been other possibilities.
I mean, this sounds like
But
history repeating itself. By the way,
yeah, that's right. It is in a sense, but
yeah.
not really that kind of history.
Hmm.
So Delhi has always found it, for some peculiar reason, much easier dealing with Umar. And the reason actually not peculiar, it's very obvious. Farooq is not easy to deal with. It takes a long, long time to be able to fathom and to be able to understand him. And he doesn't let you understand. That's the other bigness of the man, you can say. It's not easy. Umar is simple, it's straight. You get what you see. So that is why, and the Pakis, the Pakis, there's an High Commissioner, I've quoted him
Hmm.
without mentioning his name. There's a Pakistan High Commissioner. I said, why are you guys so anti-Farooq? And he said, to be honest, we find him unmanageable. So there's the answer. Delhi finds him unmanageable, so naturally Islamabad finds him even more unmanageable. He's not easy to manage and he doesn't like being managed. But
Yeah, but Omar is not easy to be man. Omar is his own person in a very different kind of way. He may be very correct, he may be very contained compared to his much more flamboyant father, but he's not exactly manageable. What does I mean? They're just very different
well,
personas.
they are different. But what I'm trying to say is that Omar is more amiable, he's more pliable, let me put it like this. Now let me take you back to the NDA government. Omar was Minister of State for Commerce, and Vajpayee was very impressed with him. So he made him Minister of State for External Affairs. He was even more impressed with him. So he felt, this guy is great. He's wonderful. Farooq, you don't understand. You can't understand. You don't know what he's going to say. And he doesn't let you understand. So that's the whole issue. That's the problem. But I think in all this, the way Delhi has treated Dr. Farooq, they missed out on a huge lot. Because there is no bigger leader, not only in Kashmir, but in India, I would say, than Dr. Farooq Abdullah.
Let's look at one of those big disappointments for Farooq Abdullah himself, not becoming vice president. He saw that as a big betrayal. He understood that when Abdul Kalam becomes president, it is not possible for two people from
No,
the
he
minority.
understood it before. He understood
Yeah.
it before that. He's far too smart. I've told you that story about May that year when he
Yeah.
summoned me to his office, and he's never done that. It was actually the summons. Whenever we met, it was always at his house. But that day I was summoned to his office, and he sat me across his desk and said, tell me, are they going to make me vice president? I said, of course they are. He said, no, they won't. I said, you've spoken to all of them, and all of them have assured you. He said, yes, I have, but I don't trust any of them. And he was right. He was
But
right.
and
But
you think that was
I'll tell you something. Talking of betrayals, let me tell you something. The bigger betrayal for him was actually 84. Indira Gandhi letting him down. The Gandhis and the the Gandhis and the Abdullahs have had a very close relationship. It's been love-hate, but it's been a very close relationship. And actually, when Dr. Saab became chief minister, again, it was Indira's choice. She suggested to the Sheikh that, why don't you appoint your son as your successor? She wanted him. And yet, so when she got him dismissed, and the governor refused to do it, so they had to change the governor. And Farooq regarded that betrayal. Of course, he says that, in the book, he's written a book or dictated a book called My Dismissal, in which he says, my family let me down. No, no, it was not the family. The betrayal happened in Delhi.
Now, one of the criticisms of Farooq Abdullah, and you don't have any criticisms, serious criticisms that I came across in the book, but you acknowledge that one of the criticisms for Farooq Saab is that he's non-serious. He's non-serious, right? And there are all these sort of now almost iconic stories, riding pillion with Shabana Azmi, dancing, picking up a flute and playing it, whatever, being a, some would say Zindadil, some would say flamboyant, some would say non-serious politician. How do you do write about the Shabana Azmi story in your book? What is the story there? Let's set the record straight. What is that story about?
But you've called him Zindadil, haven't you?
I have. But I'm saying,
so you know what he is. The thing is, firstly, that Shabana Azmi story goes back a long, long time. And the real story there is that both Dr. Farooq and Shabana happened to be in Gulmarg at the same time. And she saw that motorcycle there and she said, why can't I have a ride on it? And Farooq, being Farooq, said, sure, I'll take you for a spin. That's all there was to it. But it's very wrong to say that Farooq is non-serious. He is very, very serious about his politics. The thing with Farooq is, he's very open about everything,
Yeah.
Unlike most of our politicians, he's very, very plain, very there. Okay, there's more to life than politics. There's other things also. He has that great obsession with golf. He must play golf. Even when I went to see him in 2020 when he was under house arrest, he said, how are you? I said, how are you, sir? He said, I'm fine. Don't you see me? I'm okay. But he was not fine. And the only thing he said, yeah, I missed golf. And sure enough, soon after he was released, he was back to golf. And even today, at this age, he still plays golf.
But let's end.
But he won't. At this age, he doesn't sing and dance as much as he did in the past.
Yeah, because my memory of Farooq Abdullah is always that at any gathering, he is the life of the party. He's on his feet dancing. I mean, I remember.
And now I'll tell you something.
Where he did, wiggle for wiggle with Ranveer Singh, the actor. Like, I remember introducing both of them on a stage, and Farooq outdanced Ranveer Singh.
Yeah, he could outdance anybody. But, today, there is also the Omar influence. Let me tell you. That in many things, Omar holds him back. That now, look, let me do it my way. And Farooq is that kind of father who would always say, please do it your way. Your way will always be better than mine.
But it's also a function of age, maybe.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is. Have you ever found similarities between Farooq and me?
Quite a lot, actually. But I don't think you're. If Farooq has mellowed, I don't think you have.
I don't need to mellow. I'm not Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir.
That's right.
Why should I mellow? And it's more than 20 years ago that I left government. So why should I mellow now at my age?
Fair enough. Now, there have been two cataclysmic events in the tortured history of Jammu and Kashmir and of India. The Rubaiya Saeed kidnapping and the IC-814 hijacking. And while I know some of these stories, the larger audience may not. And you describe how, especially in IC-814, when Farooq Abdullah is asked to release terrorists, Masood Azhar among them, in exchange for the safety of the passengers on board IC-814, how angry he is, how livid he is, right? And he is shouting, he's banging the phone down, he bangs the phone down on Jaswant Singh, who eventually goes on board the plane escorting these released terrorists. Talk about that time.
You see, the Rubaya kidnapping was a coincidence because I happened to be posted in Srinagar. So we were in the same boat together.
Hmm.
Although he was missing when it happened, he was in London and he
Yeah.
came back 3 days later. But he was there when the release took place and a couple of days before that. And we interacted very closely at that time. That was one thing. The 8143 was, uh, it was played up much more because it happened before I mean, everybody watched it. And
Agreed. Agreed.
for Dr. Saab, it was theater, And you see, don't miss, there's a point here that Delhi has always been critical of him. People in Delhi have always been critical of him. So these are opportunities when he can, swing it back on Delhi. Now, what are you guys doing? This is a big blunder. This is a mistake. You'll have to pay for it. So that's his way of paying back Delhi, among other things. Of course, there was one point here in which he was serious about. At one stage in that whole banging and this, that, and shouting, he said to me, he said, all right, if you want to take those two fellows, take them. But I won't release this fellow, Latram. He's a killer. He's a Kashmiri. He has caused so much destruction here, I won't let him go. I
Hmm.
said, sir, you're right, but it's 3 or nothing. It has to be done. So then he said, I'm going to the governor, like usual style. He said, I'm going to the governor and I'm going to resign.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, then let's go together. And the
Hmm.
rest of the story, you know.
Uh, He wanted to resign after IC 814, but then he did not.
No, no, of course he did not. I don't think he was ever serious about resigning. That's theater.
But he got his chance to tell Delhi that you attack me, and now look what you are having to do, basically.
Exactly, exactly. And he did it during Rubaya's time also. There were
Now,
those
in
2 minutes. Yeah,
yeah,
okay, sorry.
no, no, go ahead, complete your point.
Yeah, you remember on the 13th of December when Rubaya was released in exchange for whoever those guys were, 4 or 5 of them, uh, there were 2 ministers who came from Delhi along with the
Hmm.
DIV, Mr. Narayanan. And he made his point to them also. In fact, he told me, he says, you narrate the whole story to them. Tell them what happened. What is the reality here? So, and at that time, according to what he told me, and that is what is recorded, that he sent a dissenting note to the governor that I
Yeah,
don't agree with this.
yeah. Let me end by asking you if you think Farooq Abdullah has made any serious political mistakes.
No, I don't think so. That's a difficult question you brought up at the end after I've told you so many stories. Has he ever made any political mistakes?
I mean, a
No,
mistake that cost him, a mistake that cost the state. Everybody makes mistakes.
yeah, but if you were to ask me whether such and such thing was a mistake, it doesn't come to mind easily, what mistake he might have made. I'm sure he's made mistakes and he must be regretting some mistakes. But there is nothing very obvious, because politically he is very, very sound. And as a Kashmiri youngster told me, ये बाप का भी बाप है. बाप का बाप means कि ये अपने बाप का भी बाप.
But there's this line in your book, it's reminded me. There was this time when I was out in sort of the villages of the Kashmir Valley. I don't remember which year it was, and I asked this elderly villager, how do you look at Farooq Abdullah? And he said, "वो तो disco है. उनका तो
Hmm.
क्या बोले, वो तो disco है." Right
Hmm.
now, this disco can be seen in two ways, right? It can be seen as flamboyant, but not
Hmm.
necessarily with enough gravitas, or it could be seen as somebody who lives life to the fullest. You obviously see it as the latter.
Yeah, of course. He has lived life to the fullest. He's lived life like Ulysses, he's drinking it to the dregs. But now it's a different Farooq. It's a very mellowed Farooq, and he's more into the Quran and this, that, and the other. Now, if I were to ask him to stand up and dance, I don't think he will. Let's put it like that.
Well, that's a poignant note to end on. We leave it there. A.S Dulat's
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
the Chief Minister and the Spy, will be out this week. Do pick up your copy if you're interested in Jammu and Kashmir politics. And even if you know nothing about Kashmir, it's a very accessible portrait of a man who's had a very consequential impact on the politics of India, on the politics of Jammu and Kashmir. And according to Mr. Dulat's perspective, he's a man who is yet to get his full recognition. Thank you so much, Dulat Saab. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Now I need to.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voter Story and support independent, robust journalism.